I have the great pleasure of introducing Marianne, which, by the way, I'm extremely happy of saying these words, because we have been talking like 2 years online. And then when I saw her yesterday, it was like a revelation. Finally, I knew you before, like some years before. You're famous. And then I began to speak with her these two years, and now I met you. So I take advantage of this to really thank you for everything, for your career, for your example, and for the talk you are going to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco, so much. And apologies to Meli for the ways in which I will not deliver the session that you would have gotten from her. But Meli Barber serves as the president of DignityUSA. She is an amazingly talented and dedicated person, trained in theology, but also has a lot of nonprofit management skills. She helped to manage a foster care agency for many years. She ran the Dorothy Day House in Indianapolis. She and her partner founded and ran that for many years. Now she is working at a housing services organization as a manager there, and she also teaches in the Indiana University Master's Program for Social Work. So she knows of what she speaks, and I'm going to try and fill in. So I know she's very unhappy that she could not be here. So I think the main thing that we wanted to address in this session is the difference between leading and managing. And I want to really talk about that in the context of the organizations that we work with. Because the reality is, in many NGOs or nonprofit organizations, leadership and management can be separated, right? The staff, the personnel, the volunteer roles can often be split into these two things. But working with organizations the size of ours, we have to be very thoughtful about how these two functions are managed, because we generally don't have staffs or teams of volunteers that are large enough to really be thoughtful about it. But it is still important that both functions get covered and that get covered well. So again, leadership is this in the way? This, yeah.
Actually,
for those of you online or moving, there we go. Great, thank you. So leadership, leading an organization or a movement involves, kind of the big picture stuff and the things that get people motivated and get behind the organization. The vision, the strategy, inspiring people, getting folks to follow and believe in the mission and believe in the path that has been set for the mission. And I'm sure each of you can think of charismatic leaders or inspiring leaders that either brought you into the kind of work that you do or who give you the motivation to keep going in what is often very, very difficult and challenging work. Please come in. Managing is much more about the nuts and bolts of what keeps an organization of any size, right? It's the policies and procedures, the money, having a management structure in the organization, ensuring that the work gets done on time and within budget. Sometimes it is thought about as having, and if folks are interested in the slides, we can email them out to you if you like. Great. Notice folks scribbling on all of these, Meli puts a lot of value into here. It's brain work and hand work, right? And a lot of times it's the managers are the folks who are seen as the, yeah, but, right? Yes, thinking about creating a world in which no youth is religiously traumatized because they're queer. Fantastic. Yeah, but what is it going to take to get there? Right? You know, it's that person's role, but it's very important to get the work done. When leadership and management intersect well, you accomplish your goals, people understand your vision, it's clear who represents the organization in public, people feel motivated, and you know how to use and mobilize and maximize the resources that you have. So that's kind of the sweet spot, right? For any organization, leadership and management work together so that these things are happening out in the world. Okay. So in here, Meli's developed 5 practices, and underneath there are 10 specific commitments of exemplary leadership. Please come in. We will go through them fairly quickly, just because there's a lot of material. So, modeling the way, understand your values as an organization and know what your voice is. You know, if people understand when they see, you know, a social media post or a quote in a news media, does it resonate with the consistency for your organization? And align your actions with the values that your organization has. If your organization is all about LGBTQ equality and you only hire straight people, what does that say about, you know, the vision and how you're translating in the world? I mean, that's an absurd example for some of us, but who knows? Secondly, to inspire a shared vision. Envision the future by imagining exciting and ennobling possibilities. That vision that I just put out, that about creating a world in which no young queer person is religiously traumatized, came from a retreat that we held last year for a dozen of our young leaders. And when we asked them about what should Dignity USA's vision be moving forward, that was what they came up with. And you know, it gives you goosebumps, right? If that could happen, how wonderful would it be? And wouldn't we have really accomplished something? So it's ennobling, it's exciting, it's concrete enough, and it's meaningful. So all of those things came together. And then you assume that people want to share what you're aspiring to, that you can all get behind a common vision. Okay? You challenge the process. Seize the initiative and look outward for innovative ways to improve. Okay? This is, many of us who are under-resourced can often fall into the trap of but we've always done it that way, right? Because changing things demands resources. It demands getting folks behind new possibilities. It takes time. All of those things that we can feel very strapped for when we have so much work to get done. But understanding that innovation and new ideas can propel us forward in unimagined ways is really important in terms of thinking that doing things the way we always have is going to get us to our goals. So it demands openness and openness to change, which is really hard for us. Finally, experiment and take risks and celebrate those small wins. Okay? Again, an example from my own organization's history, Dignity USA. We have done, since 1971 or 73, we have done a conference for the entire country every 2 years. We have always held it in a downtown location, in a hotel that was pretty spiky, because we wanted to give people an elevated experience, people who were often oppressed and, not feeling the right to be visible in community or whatever. We're 56 years old now. We decided to do our last conference in a little Embassy Suites hotel, not a high brand thing, in a suburb of a Midwestern city. It was phenomenal. The lower prices at the hotel, the lower cost of food and audiovisual equipment allowed us to have a pretty cheap conference and include every single meal in the process, which allowed us to keep our community together. People weren't running out to restaurants and trying to get back on time. They weren't spending extra money. Free parking was included. There was a free breakfast. Our community spent 3 uninterrupted days together, built relationships, and were just focused on being there. They didn't have to go back out into the threatening, awful world. They experienced being in a safe and supportive environment, which is really important for queer people in the US right now, because we took a risk and did something really different. A small thing in a lot of ways, not a big city, a suburb, cheaper, brand of hotel than people are used to, but it really, really worked for us. Let's go on. Oh, sorry. Next, enabling others to act. A lot of us who wind up in leadership position, let's face it, are control freaks. Does that resonate for anybody in here? We have to be about empowering, mentoring people to do things that we feel are important and that some of us would prefer to hold on to. It's about building collaboration. It's about succession planning. It's about helping people build their own skills and thereby their investment in our organization or our movement. All of those things come together. You let people know that you trust them, that you value their abilities, and that they are an important part of the team. And finally, encourage the heart. Show appreciation when people have made important contributions. Again, we're often so stressed out in trying to get the work done in our under-resourced situations that we can forget the importance of sending a quick note, a quick email, bringing somebody up at the front of a meeting and just being really clear about the important contributions that they have made to this organization. I mean, if we did not thank our partners from ICTUS and Priest Mom 6 million times, we have missed the opportunity, because what they have done is literally put their lives on hold, their families on hold, called in from vacations for meetings. I mean, they have really sweated to provide this opportunity for all of us. And finally, create a spirit of community, right? Everybody who's part of the work, whether they are a service deliverer, a service recipient, a funder, a cheerleader from the side, they're all part of the community that creates the ability for us to do our work. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Oops. I don't get the touch of this. I'll let you do. Oops. This is a quote that Meli uses. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. Right? So I hope that resonates for a lot of folks in this room, and you can think of people that you have done that for. Thank you. Okay, let's look at the importance and skills needed for managing the organization. First of all, the board. Now, again, I know some of our organizations are small enough and informal enough that we might not have a legal organization. We might have something like a steering committee or a group of volunteers who everybody knows are really the ones responsible for the organization. But you have some kind of a board, right? Whoever those people are who take on the responsibility for ensuring this organization is viable, they are your board, no matter what the title is. So they have to oversee the work and ensure that you have what is needed to accomplish your goals and move forward into the future. Okay, implementing the program. There are people, sometimes there's some of the same folks up here, sometimes they're different, who are actually doing the work, whatever your work is. There are folks who are actually on the ground doing it. It might be the folks who set up the chairs in a circle for your meetings. It might be the folks who go to the mailbox or, check your email and make sure that every inquiry is answered in a timely and appropriate manner. Whoever the folks are who are doing the work, they're helping to manage. How many of us actually have human resources departments? Anybody here?
Yeah.
Okay, you folks do, that's great. It's really important when you get to a certain level to make sure that there's an official human resource function, but even if you don't have that position, there has to be somebody or some group of people who are ensuring that the personnel who are attached to your organization are acting appropriately, are not stealing from you, are not misrepresenting the organization, are not failing your clients or your constituents in some ways. That really is a function of the human resources, and that they are being treated justly as well within the structure. So there is a human resources function, whether you have that position or not. We have to be aware that it is people doing this work with strengths, with weaknesses, with needs. Okay? And finally, budgeting. I saw Victoria come down and then she ran away. For us, Victoria plays an incredible function within GNRC. Probably like a lot of your organizations, we don't have a lot of money. And we need to be making sure that the money that we have is going to the most important and most appropriate place, right? Somebody to continually watch that function is essential to organizational management. Okay, again, some of this will be redundant. The board, by whatever title they are known, is important for the survival of the organization, ensuring that the money is being used correctly, but also thinking about risk. I serve as, I'm reporting to our board all the time on threats to our organization. Living in the US right now is, nationalism increases, anti-LGBTQ violence is increasing, as religiously motivated violence is increasing. Until recently, I would get a monthly briefing from our Department of Homeland Security and FBI about threats that might impact our organization. It was easy for me to alert our board when there was a threat that was known, or if one of our communities presented an issue. In the current political area, all the folks who do that notification for queer groups, for Black and brown groups, for migrant groups, for anybody that our current administration doesn't like, they don't get those notices anymore. So we're trying to figure out right now another way to deal with risks to our community. At this point, it's mostly quarterly reminders to all of our community leaders to ensure they have a safety plan in place and review it. That's just one example of the kind of risk that organizations can face. It can be financial risk. It can be, somebody that you're not quite sure of is doing the kind of job they're supposed to be doing. All of those things the board is responsible on. The board has to be thinking future forward, strategic, creative, and challenging ours to think bigger and differently. Again, boards and committees can often be rooted in that we have always done it this way thing. A good fiduciary is thinking forward, recognizing we live in a world of very rapid change, and we need to be thinking creatively all the time. Okay. Most important thing here, for your leadership team, an ideal team is made up of people invested in your mission who will contribute time, talent, and treasure. Not everybody can do all three of those things. Some people might be able to give you pretty generous contributions, but they're too busy to really do a lot of practical work alone. Other folks might have the gift of time. And hopefully everybody has some kind of talent that the organization needs. So just the 3 T's, time, talent, treasure, really important for your leadership. Again, a lot of us can make the mistake of ensuring that our governing structure is made up of people we're comfortable working with. The reality is the diversity of representation, whether that's in age, whether that's in identity, whether that's in ethnic or racial makeup, whether it's just in opinion. Diversity leads to growth, and that's a really important component for our leadership teams. And you want a combination of skills. If everybody's a money manager, that's not great. If you can't have folks who can think about program, if you don't have folks who can think about communications, we're missing out. Again, our programming is determined in some ways by our mission and by the community or communities that we are trying to serve, right? What are their needs? That needs to drive our programming. Not what we want to do, you know? Maybe I'm a big theater buff, and I think that Dignity should be, doing religious theater. That's not what people need. So identify the goals that are aligned with the mission and values of your organization. Programming and a constant focus on quality improvement is great in programming. A lot of times we're told to have measures, whether it's community surveys that go out to your constituencies, and they tell you, did you get your service on time? What did you think about it? Did the person respect you in delivering the service? Whatever the questions are that are asked. Understanding your constituents' needs and their response is really important. Bless you. Okay, we talked a little bit about human resources. Again, hiring in this case applies both to paid people and to volunteers for many of us. It's really important that we're as thoughtful about volunteers that their role be matched with their skills and their skill level. Maybe they are great at greeting people, but they take them too long to, they kind of corner people, right? Make sure they have a mentor who will help them read the cues that it's time. So it's a process of development, but matching their skills and their level to what's going on. Performance reviews, again, it's really important that people get feedback about what they're doing well, where you think they can grow into, and what support the organization can give them to take on new responsibilities and challenges. Okay? If you have a capacity to give rewards, they can be monetary rewards, but a lot of time recognition is really what's important to people, or the feedback that, this client said that the interaction with you and the way that you framed how faith and being queer has been developed in members' lives was really important to them. They took something really helpful. Hearing that personal feedback is very important. Budgeting, for a lot of us, it's not our favorite part of doing the work, right? Really figuring out how to match the resources that we know we're going to have, not the ones we want, but the ones we know we're going to have, to what it is we can manage to do. So these are the skills that are really important. starting fund development efforts and ongoing fund developments is something that I think can be very scary to a lot of organizations. We're in it because we believe in the mission, but it can be really scary to ask for money, particularly if you're doing requests to individuals rather than, grant-making organizations or government organizations. But it's really important for us to be ambassadors for the work in trying to raise the funds that we need. Okay. So sustainability, it's a word that I think we can often apply just to the financial side of our organization, but we also need to be thinking about programmatic sustainability. And again, it's constantly evaluating what is it that we are offering through our organizations, and is that programming still meeting the needs of our constituents? Are there gaps that we're not meeting anymore? And are there things we've always done that are no longer really relevant? It's about asking the hard questions to keep us sustainable and moving. Okay. Because of the context of this gathering, I really wanted to just say a few words about working within the context of faith community, because I think it brings, every nonprofit has a duty of care, right? And a duty to deliver on our mission. For us, we believe those duties are sacred. It has that level. We are dealing with people who are trusting us with their souls, trusting us with their faith, right? And we need to be respectful of that, particularly in dealing with communities and individuals who are already vulnerable in many ways. So I added this to Meli's presentation, so this is not her fault. These are just categories that I thought about that we need to be thinking about. Every individual's dignity must be honored, not just respected, but honored. We need to understand that each person needs to be met and cared for where they are at each moment that they encounter us, right? We have to always honor the fact that this is a person loved into being by a creator who is abundant in imagination, beyond what we can hold, and that it is a gift to be serving that person. This speaks in some ways to the importance of safeguarding in our communities, ensuring that people are free of harassment, that they're always respected, that they are free of abuse, that conflicts are handled with respect for everybody involved. All of those things come into that as a faith community. We also are about not just helping an individual, but about building and sustaining community. So that people who have often been isolated or have felt like they don't fit in have a place where they are cherished and treasured and able to grow, flourish, and have that abundant life that Jesus promised to all of us, right? This is what we need to do in helping people to be part of a real community. And that, again, is a sacred trust that people are giving us. We have to have a deep, profound, and unshakable commitment to ethical action. And there may be times when we're asked to cut corners in some way or make trade-offs, and making those decisions about how do I find an ethical way to deliver this service, to respond to this attack, to deal with this money that we've been given. All of those things need to be grounded in our values and in our ethics. And finally, we need to be constantly open to the voice of the Spirit, wherever that is coming from, whether it's a member of the community, whether it's something we read that's pertinent to our mission, whether it's in the idea of the person you despise most in the organization. The Spirit will and can talk to us in very, very surprising ways. I think that we often begin our gatherings by having a moment of prayer in which we ask for the Spirit's voice and inspiration to be present with us. And that's a really important grounding technique, because I think it calls us constantly back to not thinking that we know everything and making us listen more deeply to all of the things that are being offered. The final image that I'd like to leave you with is a very simple one. Again, we will email these out to you so you have this. But it helps us think about how to evaluate the overall success of our work, our organization's work at any particular moment in time. So we're talking about impact versus profitability. Okay? Again, profitability is money, cash, but it can also be in terms of our capacity to have enough people, whether they volunteer or staff, to serve. So obviously, where the sweet spot for any NGO or nonprofit is that you are doing a great job of achieving your mission, you have a high impact in people's lives, and you are getting the resources that you need, or as close as possible to the resources that you need, very well. You know, that's the sweet spot. But we can be anywhere along these matrices. Where we don't want to be is down here. People are not contributing to the cause. They have a sense that you're not achieving your goals, you're not making an impact on the important mission that you started with. So we want to constantly be thinking about where on this matrix is our work at this moment. Okay. Your thoughts, your questions, what's Thank you, Valerie.